Всем привет! I'm Mariana. This is Impression Blend, and I am here to tell you about this week's most exciting movie and TV releases in another weekly blend. I have quite a selection for you today, from a historical drama to a love letter to Bergman and the creative process to serial killers. Most of these deliver the thrills one way or another. Let me tell you what's good. First up, somewhat unexpectedly, my favorite thing out of everything I'm talking about today, The Last Duel, directed by none other than Sir Ridley Scott. Based on a book under the same title, the film is a historical drama and reveals the story behind the last judicial duel fought in France, which happened on December 29th, 1386. A knight, Jean, and his friend Jacques engaged in this real-life example of trial by combat because the knight's wife, Marguerite, accused his friend of raping her. The film tells the story from 3 different perspectives, culminating in one of the most gripping duels ever seen on screen. When I first saw the trailer for this film, my feelings were a bit ambivalent. On one hand, I was immediately sold and very excited because I am generally fascinated by the Middle Ages, and this seemed to have a good tone and look to it despite the half-open helmet ridiculousness. Plus, we know Ridley Scott is perfectly capable of making an epic period piece from some of his previous work. On the other hand, I was a bit worried about the casting. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, with their awful haircuts, looked pretty out of place, and considering they both have major roles in the film, this could have been really distracting. I'm happy to report, though, this was not an issue. Matt Damon really fits his grumpy, brutish character, Jean, who nobody really likes, and Ben Affleck, well, Ben Affleck steals every scene he's in, even though he technically plays a supporting character. Obviously, it's not news that Ben Affleck can act, but he is incredibly entertaining in this role, bringing quite a bit of humor to this otherwise dark story. As for Adam Driver, who plays Jacques, he was good, but I can't really say he stood out all that much. Him and Damon fulfilled their purpose in their respective roles, but neither of them is delivering a career best performance. All of that being said, The Last Duel belongs to Jodie Comer, and the film makes it clear that Marguerite's perspective is the one that matters. Comer is wonderful, and I'm definitely hoping to see more of her on the big screen from now on. It's also interesting how different the perspective of her character feels compared to the perspectives of Jean and Jacques, which of course is part of the point, and it definitely shows that her part of the story was written by Nicole Holofcener, while the other 2 perspectives were written by Affleck and Damon. I think bringing in a woman screenwriter to write the female perspective in a film that's so focused on who gets to tell the story and who is expected to stay silent was the right move. I also have to say that it was so good to see a film where the chapter structure actually makes sense and plays into the point of the story. I usually think chapters are neat in film, but here this structure actually serves a purpose, illustrating who gets to tell the story and whose truth mattered more. To add to that, the 3 perspectives work to fill in each other's gaps. They aren't necessarily drastically different. Sometimes it comes down to interpretation, sometimes to context, sometimes to the details, and sometimes to the way the characters view themselves versus the way they come off to others. But the one thing that never needs to be questioned is Marguerite's awful experience and how much she had to put on the line to tell the truth. Now, as for the medieval action and the duel itself, Ridley Scott makes sure you are going to be at the edge of your seat. It's thrilling, it's brutal, it's gritty, it's intense, it's exactly what it needs to be, especially the duel, particularly because the stakes are so high and because of how ridiculous this idea is, these 2 men fighting to the death, because that's a apparently how God is going to decide who's right, and if the husband loses, it would mean that Marguerite lied and she would have to die for this false accusation. I mean, what the hell? Obviously, very cinematic, but the fact that these judicial duels actually existed and that's how some things were resolved, wow. So is there anything I did not love about the film? Well, it does get a little hammy at times, but that doesn't necessarily take away from the movie, all things considered. There were, however, a few things that felt pretty heavy-handed, including some over-the-top foreshadowing, and there was one character that I really wished we could have known a little bit more about. Finally, something to be aware of is that because of these different perspectives, you do get to see the assault twice, and as you can imagine, it's very uncomfortable to watch, especially the second time when you know it's about to happen. While you can understand why it's done that way and it's the catalyst for everything that's going on, it's still obviously not something you want to watch, especially twice. I'm sure I don't have to explain. But overall, I have to say I really enjoyed The Last Duel. It was honestly better than I expected it to be, and I went in thinking it should be at least pretty good considering the cast and the team behind the scenes. It just worked. The film really came together, and its 2.5-hour runtime, which could have been a disaster and a complete slog, pretty much flew by for me. It had such a good balance of action, drama, and character work. I actually loved it, and I think because of the changing perspectives and because the pacing doesn't drag anything out, this would be a good film to watch not only for fans of medieval settings and historical pieces, but also for people who aren't majorly into period dramas. I highly recommend The Last Duel. For me, it's a 9 out of 10, and it's one of my favorite films of the year at the moment. Should you go out and see it on the big screen since it's only playing in theaters at the moment? Absolutely. It looks so great on the big screen, and I mean that duel alone. Yes. Now, for something completely different, let's talk about Bergman Island, which is currently out in limited release in select theaters, but will be available on VOD starting next week, October 22nd. Out of everything I'm talking about today, this movie has absolutely nothing to do with scaring or thrilling you. So if you're somebody who does not really care about the spooky season, you just want to relax with a beautifully shot meditative drama, Bergman Island might be the film for you. The story is about a filmmaking couple, Chris, played by Vicky Krieps, and Tony, played by Tim Roth, who go on a summer retreat to the island where the legendary Ingmar Bergman lived and shot some of his famous films. They both hope to find inspiration for their future work, but as time goes on, the couple slowly starts drifting apart. A lot of the film has to do with relationships and memories, but also with the creative process and how much artists not only connect to it personally, but see the results of their work as the representation of their self-worth. Unsurprisingly, Bergman Island was received well when it played at film festivals because that is exactly the type of crowd that would appreciate this film the most. But after I was done watching it, I could not help wondering, how was this going to do outside of festivals and film Twitter? Now, this is not a comment on the quality of the film. I actually think it's beautifully done, and I think it does achieve most of what it's going for. However, this entire idea of an introspective film about the relationship between the art and the artist, multiplied by memories and nostalgia, is a very niche topic. It's a film for cinephiles, writers, and filmmakers. It's not something that I believe will have an appeal to a wide audience. Once again, that does not make it bad. In no way do I believe that mass appeal equals quality, but I feel like this is important to mention when talking about this film because you want to go in with proper expectations. Here's what I really liked about it. Let's start from the obvious. The performances across the board are lovely, and it helps that the dialogue the actors are given feels very natural and realistic, despite this being a pretty introspective film. I particularly want to once again declare my love for Mia Wasikowska. I think she is such an underrated and underseen actress, and she lights up the screen in every scene she shows up in throughout the film. I'm also someone who really loves it when a movie can capture the mood of a summer getaway and a summer romance really well, and Bergman Island definitely succeeds in this too. That being said, I enjoyed the second half of the film a lot more than the first, and not just because that's where we get Mia Wasikowska. As the movie goes on, it gets into this really interesting territory of blurring the lines between reality and fiction, which is very much my thing. This isn't done in an overwhelming plot twist kind of way. It's actually very subtle and something that, once again, plays into the film's ideas about memories and inspiration. Once the film started heading in that direction, it became a lot more interesting and a lot more special because it does take its time in the beginning to the point where you start wondering if this is just going to be one of those moody slice of life pieces, which it still kind of ends up being, but it's not as simple as it might seem from the first half. In the end, I would say I appreciated a lot about this film rather than loved it, but for the right audience, this is going to be great. Watch the trailer to get the feel for the tone of it, and I think you'll know whether or not this kind of summer movie trip is for you. I actually wish I loved it more than I did because it is a good and beautifully made film, but it just did not click for me personally, which is why for my rating, I am going with a 7 out of 10. I feel like I should have been the target audience for this, but it turned out that I was the target audience for the second half of Bergman Island. If a classic masked killer is your spooky season movie flavor of choice, there's a new Halloween sequel out, currently in theaters and also streaming on Peacock. Is Halloween Kills worth your time? Well, that depends on what you're looking for in a horror film. Halloween Kills picks up right after the events of the 2018 Halloween, and when I say right after, I mean literally the same night. It's a direct continuation of that story because, surprise, surprise, Michael Myers didn't die in Laurie's basement trap, and while Laurie and her family are at the hospital, Michael gets on with his killing spree. Slasher movie shenanigans ensues. Listen, I really do think your level of enjoyment of this film is going to come down to what you came to see. If what you're there for is to see Michael Myers unleashed, I mean, high body count, gory, brutal kills, creative in their brutality, Michael Myers being unstoppable, striking his serial killer pose again and again, all of this while he's being lit by some really dramatic, ominous lighting, you're going to have a lot of fun with Halloween Kills because that is undoubtedly the main attraction of the film. But you knew there was a but coming, didn't you? If you're someone who is easily bothered by frustrating characters and their ridiculous choices and generally questionable writing, I don't think this film is going to be for you. I don't even have much more to say about this film. If you've seen the 2018 Halloween, you know what you're getting yourself into, except this one steps up the violence and gore. It has its moments, just like the previous film, as well as some really unfortunate dialogue and acting. I don't think anyone goes to watch the Halloween franchise for amazing writing and performances, but for some reason those issues stood out more to me in this one than they did in the previous film. I will say its connection to the 1978 original is definitely stronger, as some of the characters who were kids in that one are brought back as adults, and there is an entire flashback scene in the beginning which transports transports the viewers back to 1978. It feels a bit like fan service, but at the same time, it's actually pretty neat, and I think those who have a lot of nostalgia for the original will appreciate this. There are also a couple of fun cameos, which I am not going to spoil. I will warn you that because of the way the previous film ended, there isn't as much participation from Laurie Strode and her family as you might expect. So if our legendary final girl is the main thing you want to see, she's there, but she's not front and center of the film. And that's kind of it for what I have to say here. I don't have very strong feelings either way about Halloween Kills. I think there is fun to be had here if what you want to see is Michael Myers dramatically murdering a bunch of people, which, to be fair, gruesome kills are a big reason why people like slashers to begin with, so there definitely will be an audience for this film. But for my taste, I needed more from the writing and execution, no pun intended, because overall it was just okay for me, even taking the subgenre into consideration. So as far as a rating, I am going for a meh 5 out of 10 for Halloween Kills. Let me know if it worked better for you than it did for me. Now let's end this video on a positive note and talk about season 3 of You, which is finally out on Netflix this weekend. Yes, this new season of You is actually really good and just might be my favorite season of this series to date. It's impossible for me to tell you about the premise without spoiling the first 2 seasons, so if you haven't seen the series, check it out. Come back later, but for the rest of you, here's what season 3 is about. Joe and Love are married, they're living in a nice town in Northern California, trying to raise their baby and blend into that well-off suburban lifestyle. The problem is, we all know these people are killers, so it's not long until the bodies start piling up. The best thing about this season that makes it really work is the fact that they actually expanded the perspective outside of Joe's head. Don't get me wrong, there is still plenty of that hilarious, sarcastic, unhinged inner monologue from Joe that we all love so much, but his wife, Love, is just as important of a character in this season as Joe, and we get to see a lot of her issues and her decision making. There is this interesting balance of the two of them trying to be a normal couple and trying to be parents while also clearly being unable to get away from their past and from who they are, no matter how much they try. So in one scene, it will lean into the relationship drama aspect. In another, it's them trying to figure out how to be parents. And in the next scene, they are getting rid of a body and cleaning up blood because, of course, things are going to go wrong and they're going to be the source of their own problems. It was great to see the writers take what we love about the show, which is Joe's perspective and the thriller aspect, as well as poking fun at how awful and fake regular people can be, and build on all of that, making it into a richer story, as well as adding some details about Joe's and Love's past. I think it would have been so easy to just do another storyline about Joe finding a new woman to obsess over and have that be the season, but instead there's a lot more to it, and as you see him trying to be a better person, you wonder, is he going to revert to his old self or not? Yes, they do occasionally still go overboard. I don't think anyone who watches this series can call it subtle, and there were a few moments at which the show started to feel a bit like a soap opera, but somehow all of this fits the series and works within the universe of the show. There just is something very comical about this idea of two killers absolutely hating this entire neighborhood they live in, but also trying their hardest not only to refrain from murdering them, but to actually blend in and be friendly. This lands them in some hilarious situations, and all of this has a very entertaining layer of satire on top of it. As you can tell, I had a great time with this season. This entire situation is so absurd that while it's definitely an effective thriller, it's also funnier than the previous seasons. So, if you're someone who enjoys the show, I'm here to tell you that season 3 of You does not disappoint. There is just more of everything here. More things explored, more twists, more dead bodies, more humor. It's all there, and I really hope they continue expanding on more ideas in season 4 because yes, the show has already been renewed for season 4. As for the rating, I am going with a very solid 8 out of 10 for season 3 of You. As I mentioned, I think this is their strongest season yet. And that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. As you can see, if I move in any closer, the sun has started to come out and is trying to ruin my lighting, so I gotta wrap this up. Let me know if you've seen any of these and what did you think of them in the comments below. As always, a special thank you to all my patrons for supporting me on Patreon, with an extra special thank you to the patrons whose names are on the screen right now. And of course, thank you for watching this video to everybody who's still here. I hope you're having a wonderful day and I will see you very soon in my next video. Всем пока!